Hey guys, Jesse Cotton back here from YCS Santiago, Chile. Just got second place, and pretty good. Was going for that win though. I needed the South American win to finish my to-do list, I guess. But yeah, I've been getting a lot of requests talking about the Sayak meta, so I'll give a quick rundown of kind of what I'm feeling. Obviously, I paid cash share for the event, so I'm thinking that's the strongest, but I'll go a little more in depth in a second. At the end of this video, I'm also going to give a quick update on my channel because some stuff's been going on. You may have noticed I've not posted in a bit. So I'd just like to let you guys be informed. And then also, if you want to see my exact list I used at the event, it will be going up soon on Luxury Gaming's YouTube. If you want to search it up, just Luxury Gaming YuGiOh, you should find it on YouTube pretty easily. And yeah, my deck will be there. It wasn't anything extraordinary, but I should have some good insight for you regarding to Kashtira tech choices. Anyways, what you see on screen right now should just be pretty much all the archetypes you should expect to see at an event, at least in the tier 1 level. Kashtira, Branded, Labyrinth, Mathmex, Pirellis, Super Heavies, Sprites, and Runics, typically Runic Naturia being the one that's being played the most. However, these aren't all created equal. I do think some are better than others. I think some have bigger issues, some are more targeted, some are more susceptible to being targeted. So yeah, let me get into it. I do think that Kashtira is the best deck. That's why I played it, and I think numbers are showing that as well. It is continuing to be a strong performer at all the events, not just YCS Santiago, where it took 4 of top 4 spots, but other national tournaments as well. It's been rather solid. So I think what's been happening is a lot of players have been paying less attention to cash and moving a lot of their attention towards Pirelli and Super Heavy Samurai. But that means there's less of a target on Kashtira's back, and this deck is really strong. You really just can't leave it unchecked. And that's just giving it way more room to thrive. I think even with those targets, it'd be like on a more equal footing, but with people not paying attention to it, I think it is a step above the rest. And it's interesting to see if people start teching more and more for Kashtira. I feel like if it doesn't get a larger portion of people's utility slots geared towards it, it'll kind of just take advantage and smash people. And it has the advantage that a lot of tech cards that against other decks are not great versus Kashtira. So that's not entirely true for everything, but for a lot of stuff that does hold. I just think with Kashtira, a lot of decks will struggle going second against the cash field. There's so many ways that cash can attack you. You're ripping your main deck apart, your extra deck apart, or just the Macrocosmos and removal. They have good follow-up. They can play mid-range, play aggressive like a combo. I think just going second versus cash is so unpredictable. It's hard to prepare for, and that's why a lot of decks struggle. Especially when other decks are in the format and it's diverse, you can't really afford to heavy target one deck that easily. What I do like about cash, though, is the mirror is actually not that bad. It's the only matchup that's rather interactive. So you don't have that problem where you have to prepare for everything so, like, spread out, because the mirror actually isn't toxic, which is weird to say, but yeah. That's kind of why I chose cash. I just think it's the strongest deck, given the way everyone's preparing their decks right now, and I'm curious to see if that changes, if people are going to start prepping more for Kashtira, and that'll cause the numbers to kind of drop off a bit. So the next best deck after this is a little more contentious, at least for me. I'm not really sure what I'd pick. I think it'd probably be Super Heavy or Pirelli. It's hard to say. I don't love either of these decks. I think these both of them have some problems where Pirelli, you need to invest a lot of cards to get going, and that can sometimes be a problem. And the Super Heavy deck sometimes relies on non-engine too much to play going second. That I don't think these decks are perfect, and they just have too many flaws that are holding them back, and especially be exploited if they ever get too popular and get targeted. So, I mean, obviously Super Heavy's combo is so threatening that it's forced the meta into a hand trap meta, which already kind of makes this less appealing, but yeah, these two decks are super strong. I do think they're good. I think another thing that's like not being talked about enough though is Sprite. I think it's probably up there as well, and I don't know exactly how you should be building Sprite because there's so many ways to do that. Though I don't see a reason why it should have dropped off in popularity as much as it has. It's been a solid, good mid-range deck where it can make solid fields. It can kill pretty easily with very few cards invested in it, and it can just do a lot with very little. This means you can play a lot of utility cards to fit the format, so that can adjust from what it was before to whatever it is now. If that means more hand traps, then that's fine. And also a lot of heat's been taken off it. There's less Dark Rulers in the meta, possibly, so that's less for them to deal with. And a lot of the hand traps like Droll aren't that good versus Sprite. And an upside they also have is if you are playing Sprite and you get shifted by Kashtira, you can Mannequin Cat and bring back their what's it called? Yeah, the shifter, and that does leave him in a bit of a precarious situation as well. I think you are pretty well positioned as the Sprite deck, and then with those utility cards, you're not even like just dead if you go second into cash. So I'm not sure why this has seen such a big fall off as it has in popularity. Maybe it's because there's just new stuff and people are kind of bored of Sprite. But I think this is actually a really strong tier 1 option that's not been getting the appreciation it deserves. And I don't enjoy this deck either that much, so me giving a love is going to be rare, but I think it's decently positioned. No one's preparing for it, and it's just fine. And you may catch people off guard, right? If they're playing one of these new decks, they may not be well versed in how to play that matchup versus Sprite because it's not popular. So I think that's something to give a little more attention to. Now, something I want to talk about from before that I feel like has only gotten way worse is Branded. So when you're trying to build the deck, I like to employ something I call like problem-solving deck building, where instead of just throwing cards in for synergy, you specifically try and target weaknesses of the deck and problems that it has and then solve those. And the problems that Despia has had have not been fixed by Syac. Maybe a little bit they can play through Ash a little bit better, but it comes at the cost of more cards that don't help you in other scenarios. So they can contribute to your bricking or your inability to play going second. Both of which are problems that I don't really think this deck has a good solution to. And I think this deck is really cool if you are able to focus more on the synergies and play like a combo deck, but I don't know if this is the meta where you can do that, right? A lot of decks are built in a way where they're trying to be one-card combos. So if you try to do that with Despia, you can in theory, but you end up with a deck full of like 10, 12 bricks or cards that are just suboptimal. And I don't think it's very strong. I think this deck is just a tier below the others. And results for the most part have been showing that where it's just not enough. There's so much being thrown at Despia even when it's not being targeted that it's kind of sketchy. You can't fully ignore it though. If you are cutting Ashes and Bells and those type of cards from your deck, it can be a little scary, so you don't want to just completely throw it off the radar, but I wouldn't also throw a lot into your main deck to prepare for Despia. And popularity wise, it has seemed to be falling a good amount as well. So another old deck, MathMech. I'll talk about this for a second. You got some new support with Syac just being Cyrus cards, not MathMech in specific, but those cards are cool. I don't know how necessary they are, and I'm not sure how all the players are using them in the TCG, but this deck is fine. I think this deck's biggest problem is Arise Heart is just very annoying for you. And even if they just are able to banish both of your access codes, that's kind of rough. Like, I don't know how you deal with fields that well. Truthfully, I'm not the most experienced with MathMech, so I don't have great advice. My biggest reason not wanting to play it is it doesn't even feel that consistent. Like, you have to play other level 4 extenders to search Circular, and that way to Circular feels a lot worse because it's just a lot more investment, and you just feel like you're playing a bad deck at that point. Obviously, if you can just hard draw Circular, it's nice, but it doesn't always happen. I'm also not fond of the fact that Shifter and Droll are picking up a lot of popularity, and this deck has a hard time versus those. I think MathMech thrives when it gets to do that stuff, but also it's not weak to the utility cards that are in the meta, and you can capitalize on that fact. And I'm not sure that's fully true here. I think Droll and Shifter being in the meta means MathMech can struggle. I played against a MathMech guy, and I lost the roll, and then just drew Shifter game 1, and he just did nothing, and he got destroyed. And then game 2, I think I lost big. In game 3, I went first, and I was fine. He had a Lava Golem to clear my field, but I'd made sure to set up enough of a backup plan that wasn't a problem, right? And not always easy for a linear deck to adapt, and unfortunately, I think that's what MathMech is. So I do think this deck is fine. I don't think it is as strong as the others. I do think it's better than Despia or Branded, but I don't love it as much as the other decks I mentioned before. And I think similarly to Despia, weirdly enough, is the Runic Engine. I think they've fallen off significantly from where they were before. Now, when I'm seeing a lot of success, it was partially because the Runic cards can play relatively okay into Kashtira. They're not perfect, but the engine was more than other decks can do. They at least had some counterplay, and then they could actually use the utility cards to get across the line. And then the going first board was pretty strong versus Kashtira as well, this Naturia Beast being very good. However, it seems that it has a bad matchup versus Pirelli and Super Heavy, so its matchup spread just got significantly worse. And I don't feel like your matchup versus Kashtira was ever extremely favored. So I think that being said, it's just kind of win percentage will go down by a large portion. And then maybe speaking too quickly, if that's actually going to be the case, and then maybe it can still compete. But from an outside glance, that's kind of what I'm seeing, is that there's 2 more bad matchups, so now players are dropping it, and it's also just seeming like a worse option for a tournament with. This actually has an interesting effect then on Kashtira, because now one of your, even if not a crazy unfavorable matchup, but just an unfavorable matchup is now not being played as much, your deck becomes better as well. But yeah, I don't think these cards are terrible, but I do think it's maybe not in the best interest with these decks running around. I have to imagine the Pirelli matchup is rough, so that's the main one I want to be looking at. Now there's another way to play Runic. Runic Stun did get top cut, I think, in 2 spots in Santiago, Chile. That one is worth looking at, but I haven't really had the time to dissect that. So last up is Labyrinth. Now Labyrinth is interesting because in recent month or so we've seen a kind of split in the deck where now it's played in 2 different ways. You have the traditional trap version with stuff like Lord of Heavenly Prison, Eradicator. This is actually what I lost to at the YCS, was this version. Or you have the furniture version, which I also played at the YCS, but I beat that one, where it uses the Stovey Torby, the Kuklok, and I can't remember the last one, Chandelier, I think. That's you play the Labyrinth cards like as a much heavier engine, and you're fully relying on those. So they do play somewhat differently of decks, so it's important when you're going into a tournament to understand each's weaknesses and strengths and their differences, because they're not the same and they have different things that are good against them. But as to which one's better, I don't know. I see a lot of my friends and like good players preferring the furniture version, but when I've played against it, at least from the Kashtira perspective, the one that's scarier is the one that floods me out. I feel like engine versus engine, the Labyrinth cards are fine, but they're not anything crazy. I'd rather just have Kashtira cards, or maybe even like super heavy or another engine. And the imaginary scenarios where we get some crazy turn 1 like FTK type combo with the Stovey Toby and the Kuklok or whatever almost never come up. So I don't know. I'm like inclined to say I prefer the one that can just play like Lord Heavenly Prison and then Skill Drains and then just other floodgates as well, and Eradicator. Like I lost to Eradicator, so I got Skill Drain game 1, Eradicator game 3, and those games were just out of my control. Those are the games I'm scared of when I'm playing versus Labyrinth, because Labyrinth cards are not terrible monsters, but they're not much better than Eldritch monsters either. They're just big with some okay effects. Like their effects are good. They're not insane though. Definitely a big step below I think Kashtira cards. Anyways, that's my thoughts for the meta. I know it's pretty brief right now, but I just wanted to give a quick synopsis how I'm feeling about this format, so you guys have an idea of what I would kind of do for Philly. I would still pick Kashtira, although maybe my tech cards would change a little bit. I'll probably discuss it on the deck profile video that is going up on Luxury, so make sure to check that out. And one last update I wanted to give you guys as well. So for the last week and a half or 2 weeks-ish, I've been busy and haven't posted on YouTube. A lot of that's just because I'm not a full-time content creator yet. I'm still transitioning to get more time to do so. I would love to put out more for you guys, but don't always have the time. I have been working on something though, and I'm creating a duel studio so I can do my own series or even just single duels in the way the Duel Night is done. Obviously not to a T like Duel Night, but you know, the same vibe where I have a better IRL setup so we can do real life duels, because that's exciting. I think that's where you can be more creative and play casual formats. You can do a lot. So we filmed some stuff and it's getting edited right now, and I hope that'll be good for you guys. So be on the lookout for that, and hopefully I will be more active on content creation now that I have some more time. I will also not be going to Philly this weekend, so I know if you're watching after the fact, then you would have known that. But yeah, this weekend I will be playing the Master Road to Worlds thing instead, which I should be streaming with a delay. But if you want to watch my journey and track my progress, join in. I'm not going to be interacting with the chat because obviously there'll be a pretty hefty delay, but I would still love to have you there. Anyways, I will see you guys next time. Peace.